So we started in Broomfield, Rocky Mountain Regional, with the intention to fly to Chicago. About an hour into the second leg,
the gear is down. What was going on?
What's happening? What's causing the airplane to do this? First thing we looked at was the engines.
5 pressures over 10.
Everything after an engine failure is less serious.
Yeah, looks good here.
But the engines were running fine.
The hydraulic system pressure was indicating 0. I realized that we had suffered a complete hydraulic system failure.
The hydraulic system is the system that keeps the landing gear up, but also controls the flaps and the brakes.
The beautiful thing about the DC-3 is that gear will free fall in the event you don't have hydraulic system pressure.
At that point, we had the gear down, which was good. But the airplane will not maintain altitude on a single engine with the gear down. And had we had an engine failure at that point, it would have been very serious. We needed to land the airplane.
My feeling during all of that is, son of a bitch. Again? Once you feel like you understand the scenario, the concern goes down.
You're too busy to be really afraid, but you definitely get your attention.
There's nothing that we have to do different. The hydraulic system failure is not a dangerous failure directly. The airplane continues to fly the same.
It was a manageable situation, but the appropriate thing to do was land the airplane.
We initially decided that we were going to go back to Rocky Mountain, but the wind conditions in Rocky Mountain were not ideal.
The best alternative was Greeley, Colorado,
which has a huge runway,
because our brakes were compromised and was long enough to accept a longer rollout if necessary.
We don't have what we call reverse thrust. There's no reversing mechanism on these propellers. The only way we can slow the airplane down on the ground is with wheel brakes, which are hydraulic. Obviously, we're going to tell ATC that we're now not on our way to the Chicago area. We are going to be diverting to Greeley. Air traffic wants to know what's going on.
We had a hydraulic system failure in flight.
That we're not declaring an emergency, that we don't consider this to be an emergency situation.
From the aspect of you had to deviate from your plan and do something quickly. So in that case, it's an emergency. But in terms of feeling like I have to act right now or the airplane is going to crash, it wasn't that.
November 36 Charlie, we actually have declared the emergency on our behalf.
I'm like, okay, it doesn't really change much from our perspective, maybe a little bit more paperwork when we get this thing on the ground. So they declared an emergency, which means that they are going to scramble the emergency services.
Okay, so the field is in sight.
We arrive in the Greeley area.
365, and which runway were you planning?
Planning 17.
365, Roger.
We start planning for what could ultimately be certainly a non-normal approach and landing. We're not going to use flaps on approach because the auxiliary system uses a reserve of fluid. So it's there for the wheel brakes. So that's a flapless approach. That's quite different. No problem. We train for that.
November 8336 Charlie, DC-3 is downwind runway 17 and really.
Paul got up and put some additional hydraulic fluid into the system so that we could activate a standby brake system once we get on the ground.
Okay, grab that handle and do not pump yet.
One pilot has to provide the auxiliary system pressure with the hand pump.
Pump, pump, pump.
And then, of course, the other pilot is flying the damn airplane.
Pump, pump, pump.
The approach and landing and the landing rollout all goes as expected.
It was pretty normal. We didn't really have a difficult time with the landing.
We bring the aircraft to a complete stop on the runway, and then we get the aircraft to a taxiway.
And airport ops, if you can hear us, everything's normal so far. We're going to bring it to a stop on Charlie 3 here.
You guys want to put a chalk in?
As soon as we were stopped and had the airplane chalked, the fire department waved goodbye and headed back to town.
We've got hydraulic fluid just flowing out of the airplane, out of the left landing gear wheel well.
The identification of the problem wasn't very hard.
It's immediately obvious what has happened is we've had a hose failure. Now that we're on the ground,
What do we do now?
Nick, there's a incident report for the Greeley Airport. Okay. A brief description of the incident. If you want to fill out as much of the rest of this as you can,
Sure.
You and I can collaborate on what we put there.
Yeah.
I let Mary know that they had declared an emergency on our behalf.
Yeah.
And yes, you take your pilot hat off and you put your slightly oily mechanic hat on. I forgot to bring my work hat. So I'm going to grab one out of the...
Yeah, we've got a few.
We don't carrying that particular piece of hose. We've got other pieces of hose, but not that one, of course. It's the middle of Sunday afternoon in Greeley, Colorado.
It turned out that it was Mother's Day. As a result, everything was closed at the airport, so there was no shops or technicians or places where we could get parts. Despite all our best efforts, we couldn't do it that day.
Good morning, aviators! This morning, a special shout out to a legendary bird that made an unexpected stop right here in Greeley, Spirit of Douglas. Currently flying around the world and heading east to join the D-Day Squadron, the famous group of passionate folks from across the globe. They keep the last flying DC-3s alive and kicking in honor of the men and women of D-Day. Not reenactors, not flying museums, but living crews who carry history into the sky. And Spirit of Douglas, she's not just joining the squadron, she will fly at the front line of the pack.
The next morning, after everybody got back, it turns out that there's a very good engine shop who was able to manufacture the specific hose that we needed. But the people at the engine shop were very, very helpful as well. They just went out of their way to drop everything, and yeah, it was very nice.
And that's one of the incredible things about this journey and other ones like it that I've been involved with. I don't know whether it's the aircraft or whether it's just human nature, but you land somewhere with a maintenance issue and invariably you find a number of people bending over backwards to try and help you. And that's exactly what happened.
The next challenge was that we didn't have any hydraulic fluid, and neither did anybody else on the airport. So I actually went down to a store where they carried a brand of hydraulic fluid that was approved in the airplane. So with a remanufactured hose and hydraulic fluid, we were finally able to get out our way. And the next destination was Rockford, Illinois. We were one day behind our planned schedule.
The track lengths were such that we couldn't do much more than the intended next day destination of Rockford. Our delay was now becoming relatively significant. So yeah, now we're starting to chew into our reserves. My concern is we've still got the vast majority of this trip to make, and we're now eating into our reserves, which I was honestly expecting to need across the North Atlantic. I'm expecting a weather delay of some kind across the North Atlantic. So yeah, we're starting to look down track now at some of the schedule points that we've got to make, and we're realizing that we need to make up some time.
We had expected to land in Connecticut a couple of days in advance of when actually the activity started that related to the Legacy Tour. The actual delay didn't really hurt our participation in anything. We're able to arrive in Connecticut in time to do the things we were planning to do with the rest of the group who were flying.
Thankfully, no more drama, no more issues, no more delays, and the leg to Rockford was relatively simple and relatively short.
On the approach to Rockford, it was at sundown, and the view of that was just very spectacular. It was really, really pretty.
In 24 hours on the ground in Greeley, we made new friends, we built professional relationships, we developed new resources. It couldn't have gone any better. You know, from a bad situation, we made the very best of it.
Right. Anytime you go to an airport, people will walk out and want to see the airplane, want to know about it, want to learn about it. And I think that if you kind of respect that and give them time and talk to them and give them the ability to look on the airplane and so forth, it creates a great deal of kind of loyalty, even if it's short term. And plus it's nice to do. You know, it feels good. And it feels good for us, feels good for them. And having people that were willing to engage with them about the airplane made it even more special.